Okay, so I don't really talk about this. Like, I've told maybe 3 people the full version of this story. And every time I do, I regret it a little, not because I don't want people to know, but because of the way they look at me after. But I've been thinking about it lately. I don't know why. I just keep coming back to it. So I'm just gonna say it. I was 22. It was January, dead of winter in Columbus, Ohio. And I had just made the very smart decision to drop out of college with $800 in my checking account and absolutely no plan. I needed an apartment. Like, yesterday. I found it on Craigslist. $375 a month, heat included, 2nd floor of this old walk-up on the east side. For Columbus in 2003, that was actually a decent deal. I called the number. The landlord met me there that same afternoon, and I took it on the spot. Didn't even negotiate. Didn't ask questions. I just handed him the deposit and thought, okay, I'm figuring it out. The one thing I noticed, and I noticed it, I just didn't think about it, was that the apartment wasn't completely empty. Every other room was cleared out, but in the bedroom, in the corner, there was this chair. Small, wooden, old-looking, facing the wall. I figured the last tenant just left it. People leave stuff. I've left stuff. I turned it around so it faced the room, pushed it against the other wall, and that was that. Went to sleep on my mattress on the floor, feeling like I was finally, barely getting my life together. Woke up the next morning, made coffee, walked into the bedroom. The chair was facing the corner again, and I stood there looking at it for a second, and then I said out loud to nobody, okay, and I went to work. Here's the thing about being broke and living alone. You don't have the luxury of being scared. You just don't, because what's the alternative? Move out? Go where? So you rationalize. You rationalize hard. The scratching started around week 2. Every night, and I mean every single night, somewhere between 2:40 and 3 a.m., I'd hear it. Coming from inside the wall behind my headboard. This slow, dragging sound. Like fingernails. Like someone on the other side of the drywall just drawing their fingers down, slowly. No rush. The first night I heard it, I sat straight up in bed and grabbed my phone and just stared at the wall for like 10 minutes. Nothing happened. It stopped. I told myself, rats. The second night, definitely rats. By the 5th night, I had bought traps and plugged every crack I could find with steel wool, and I was Googling nocturnal scratching inside walls. Columbus, Ohio at 3 a.m. like a completely normal person. The scratching did not care about my steel wool. So eventually, I called the landlord. Told him about the sounds, asked if there'd been a pest problem. And there was this pause. This weird, too long pause, and then he said, really quietly, has it started scratching yet? I said, what? And he hung up. I'm not exaggerating. He just hung up. And I stood in my kitchen staring at my phone like, what just happened? Because that's not a normal thing to say. That's not a landlord asking about a maintenance issue. That's a man who already knew something was in that wall and wanted to know if it had introduced itself yet. I called back 4 times. He never picked up. I started talking to neighbors. Not in a weird way, just, when I'd pass someone on the stairs. Asked casual questions. Mentioned I was new, asked how long they'd been there. That kind of thing. The woman on the 3rd floor, she'd lived in the building for years. Really sweet. And when I described the person who'd lived in my apartment before me, young woman, quiet, kept to herself. She went still in this way that I still think about. She said her name was Carol. She said Carol had lived in that apartment for about 8 months. And then she told me what the landlord had somehow failed to mention at any point. Carol had died in the apartment. Not a crime, nothing like that. They think it was her heart. She was in her late 30s, she lived alone, and nobody checked on her. By the time anyone realized something was wrong, she'd been gone for almost 3 weeks. And I asked, I don't know why I asked, something just made me. I asked where they found her. The woman looked at me for a second and said, in the bedroom, in the corner, sitting in that little wooden chair, just sitting there, facing the wall. Nobody knew why. Her family had no explanation. Her friends had never seen her do anything like that. She was just there, in the chair, in the corner, like she'd been watching something or waiting. By week 4, I was running on bad sleep and gas station coffee, and I had developed this very healthy habit of lying completely still in the dark every night, waiting for the scratching to start. I was not doing great. And then one night I was sitting on the floor near the chair. I don't even know why. I think I dropped something, and I noticed the wall looked off behind it. There was a section where the paint was slightly thicker, smoother, like something had been patched over and not carefully. Like someone had done it fast and just hoped nobody would look too close. I got a butter knife. I don't know what I was expecting. Probably nothing. I just needed to feel like I was doing something instead of just lying there listening. I worked at the edge of the patch and it came away in one piece, like it was barely attached, like it wanted to come off. Inside the wall, there was a small hollow, and inside the hollow, wrapped in a plastic grocery bag, a journal. Her handwriting was small and neat. I sat on the floor and I read the whole thing in one sitting. Most of it was so normal it hurt. Grocery lists, venting about a coworker, wondering if some guy she liked was going to text her back. Normal life. The life of a person who had no idea what was coming. But the entries toward the end changed. She started writing about feeling watched, about nights she couldn't sleep, about how the feeling was always worst in that corner, that specific corner of the bedroom. Like something lived there, or something was pulled there. And then the last entry. She wrote, "I know what the chair is for now. As long as it faces the corner, it stays in the corner. It watches the corner instead of watching the room. I moved it once, just to test. That was the worst night of my life. I moved it back. I'm not sure I was fast enough. I'm writing this down because I need someone to find it. Whoever is reading this, don't move the chair. Please, just leave it where it is." I finished reading. I looked up. The chair was in the middle of the room, facing my bed. I had not touched it. I want to be really honest about what happened next, because in movies the person always does something brave or dramatic. They investigate. They confront it. They try to understand. I put on one shoe, grabbed my keys and my phone, and I left. That's it. That's the whole thing. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't leave a note. I walked out at 3 a.m. in January in Columbus, Ohio, in one shoe. And I got in my car and I drove to my friend Dana's apartment and I knocked on her door until she let me in. She lived in the unit directly below mine. She didn't ask any questions that night, which is one of the reasons she's still my best friend 20 years later. She just handed me a blanket and went back to sleep. In the morning, when I finally actually looked at my phone, I had a text from her, sent the night before. Right around the time I'd been sitting on the floor reading the journal. It said, "Hey, everything okay up there? Woke up to use the bathroom and it sounds like you have someone over. I can hear 2 sets of footsteps. Kind of late, hello? All good?" I read it twice, 3 times, because I was alone in that apartment, the whole night. The only movement I made was sitting down on the floor. 2 sets of footsteps. Dana heard 2 sets of footsteps. I lost my deposit. Never went back, not even for my stuff. My mom thought I'd had some kind of breakdown. Maybe I did. I don't know. I looked up the apartment listing about 6 months later. Someone else had moved in. I thought about reaching out. I didn't know what I'd even say. I still think about Carol sometimes. About those 3 weeks when nobody knew. About what she saw in that corner that made her write those words. About whether she moved the chair herself at the end or whether something else did. I think about the scratching. I think about Dana's text. And I think about the fact that whatever Carol was trying to contain in that corner, she'd been gone for 3 weeks before anyone found her. 3 weeks. The chair was still facing the corner when they did. Whatever she was keeping there, she kept it there until the very end.